Hello, inspiring professionals. Welcome back to Evolve Quest. Today we have a special guest on our channel. His name is Sandeep Dhillon. Sandeep is the CEO of Talmix, which is a fast-growth scale-up business in the HR software space. We used to work with Sandeep in the company before, and then we had quite a few conversations after he's become the CEO of Talmix, where I was just incredibly impressed by his very thoughtful and forward-thinking approach to managing the team, building a culture in the company in which people really thrive, and there is sort of open feedback and transparency. So I was really keen to interview Sandeep because now I feel this is more important than ever for companies to be very deliberate in how they manage the teams and culture while working remotely, as we are in the COVID-19 lockdown situation right now. So I hope you get a lot out of this, especially if you are in a leadership or a management position. So welcome, Sandeep.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, Katrin.
Thank you for your time. Yeah, I can see you're in your office alone.
I am, and I'm actually quite lucky because I live 5 minutes away and there's no one else in the building. So I've probably got free reign of the office for the next few months while people decide on what they're going to do. So it's been nice to get a bit of a break and a little bit more back to business as usual.
In our conversations, you brought up a lot of the different concepts for the way you build a culture of transparency and engagement within your team. Before we kind of talk about how you're adapting this to the remote environment, could you maybe share a little bit of what types of concepts and ideas? I know you've experimented with so many. So which ones did you find the most useful?
I've been at this business for 5 years and we've always been continually adapting the culture. We started off with the premise of coming up with concepts about what we would like to have in a culture. And I think the thing with culture is it kind of just adapts to your staff and your team as it starts to grow. I think we've got a very strong culture now, in terms of the key sort of attributes we have. So in terms of how we communicate as a team, it's bold, it's bright, it's straight up. So we expect all our communications to be like that. How we serve our customers, it's fast, it's flexible, it's flawless. 3Fs, very easy to remember as well. And the fast, flexible, flawless actually came from one of our junior team members. So it's really important that you engage with your team members to come up with some of these concepts, because a lot of the time, many companies, and we've been guilty of it, a while in the past, is coming up with concepts we think are appropriate for the business and then pushing it downwards. Whereas engaging with the team at the most junior level and get them to come up with what they think the culture is. And I think that works really well when you embed it. And so coming up with clear, simple concepts on how you communicate as a team and how you serve clients or how you behave across everything. Simplicity is absolutely key. And that then becomes very understandable for people to, start to adopt that as well.
So it's like the kind of bottom-up approach in soliciting suggestions from your team in terms of how they want to approach work and what they want success to be measured on.
And I think although it's a bottoms up, you still should provide structure. We've tried elements before where we hold workshops and it's far more free form. And the challenge again is when you want to engage with senior level team members, completely junior level team members, you still need to have some form of structure around that. Not too much, but enough flexibility around that. And you need a good facilitator, or you could facilitate yourself. You know what you're looking for. Again, leading from the top is really important. I think finally, just on the cultural piece, transparency is so important. And again, I think it's maybe a little bit easier in smaller companies, but as I've been in larger firms, we worked together in one, and then before that, another larger firm. There's far less transparency at the senior level that comes down. And I think, again, in the future of work aspect, there needs to be a lot more clarity about deliverables and what you're expected and what the goals are. More direct relationship between what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how that will move towards your targets. And the more disconnected that gets, then the more challenging it gets to get that buy-in. So transparency and something that's directly relatable together is extremely important. And I think to finish off on that point, because we have built all of that, we found that the transition during the COVID period from a business operations perspective was a lot more seamless than we were expecting it to be, because the business was able to continue to operate with these elements that we had already embedded.
And for anyone who just kind of wants to start putting this in place, would you recommend kind of going with the workshops, or kind of just bringing these topics in at team meetings, or like what would be the next step?
So I think first step, stepping back to kind of what I think what I said maybe earlier on, was think about your stakeholders and think about what kind of culture is appropriate for your business.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on who you're selling to, what type. So fast, flexible, flawless is not necessarily the same for any other business, right? If you've got a customer, what kind of service level would they expect? With that service level, what are the attributes? So is quality really important or not, right? It depends on what you're doing. If it is that really fundamental to your culture, that everything is high quality? If it is, then you need to be hiring for that type of approach. So you need to look at what those key attributes are. If you do have a mission already and it's a very clear mission, then great. If you don't, then you should start to build that with your team as well, because you need to get that buy-in as to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've got an idea, you build that in, and particularly your leadership team needs to be bought in, and you need to be bought in. Like this needs to be, you need to live and breathe this. If you're not going to do it, it's not going to happen. Once you're comfortable with that framework, then you can start to do like mini workshops and then just start to develop it from there. I think that's the way I would approach it on a more step-by-step basis.
Yeah, amazing. I really love your kind of like inside out approach. So you first have to work on yourself as a leader in order for others to, first of all, kind of follow you by example, or secondly, really buy into the what you're implementing, because you also really like live by those.
It's number one,
values.
trust. The only way you're going to build this is your team trusts you. Your team know that you can do what they're doing as well. So again, based on my last job, I can do a lot of this stuff. And through this organization, I was leading sales at one point. I've sold to customers. I can sell to customers. I can jump on the phone. I know a relatively minute detail as to what the process is. So the team are comfortable knowing that I know exactly what they're doing. So, some leaders are so disconnected from what's actually happening, which is really bad, because you need to be able to jump in and help them if they need to. I can jump in and help my team with any challenges that they've got with customers, and I know enough to do that. Mm-hmm. When your team trusts you, they trust that you know what you're doing, and they will then follow you. The other thing is coming back to transparency. So we use software to gather very regular feedback, which has actually been very good, because particularly in this situation, we implemented this in 2016. So we got consistent feedback over that period of time from all the team members. It's integrated into Slack. Questions them every sort of 2 weeks.
Can I ask what software you use for that?
It's called Office Vibe. So there's many different options on that, but I think measuring employee well-being is really important. It's even a smaller company size, you can really start to see trends and any issues. And what I've been really impressed with is through the COVID situation, actually our engagement levels have gone higher. So for me, that I can take comfort that I know that there is a higher level of engagement going. But from that, people can also put anonymous feedback, and we do listen to that feedback.
Yeah, and it's anonymous, right? Is it anonymous? Or?
Completely anonymous. That's the key part for me. We took the concepts, but then what was important is we trained people around those concepts by giving real life examples. And as a leader, I needed to live that. So when we first implemented it, I had one-to-ones with my team, and they could say whatever they wanted to me. They could be as direct as they wanted to me.
Wow, that takes some courage.
And it was fine. I got some feedback directly, and it was great. I was thinking, this is exactly what I want to see, because, one element of culture I didn't like in companies before is when you have people who know something is not working or it's not right, don't say anything. And that is detrimental to the business. And I think if you're growing a fast growth business, you will obviously make mistakes, but you need to limit those. And the way you limit those is having transparency. So if a junior team member thinks that we're doing something wrong, then give them the space to talk about it and give them the space to validate it,
It's so easy for someone, right? When you have a responsibility for a project and there are some things that are going wrong, it can often be so hard to bring up those issues because they will be blamed for the mistake. So there's always this kind of anxiety that comes with it. So can you give me a few examples of what would someone in your team do in order to avoid those kind of situations?
Again, it comes down to transparency, and it also comes down to, as a leader, being very open and transparent about where we've done things that didn't work out. And I think the whole, I know it's an overused word, but fail fast, is important.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got venture capital backing, and a lot of the time the VCs are very good because, they're very open about, we invest money in the business and we want you to experiment and test in a sensible way. So we know that certain investments will not work out, but we always take calculated risks. So we're not just doing things to completely experiment. We look for elements where we think it could work in evidence, and then we trial it in a systematic and measurable way. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But the important thing then is to the team to communicate consistently, this is the reason why it didn't work, and this is what we've done to change it. And then it's the exact same for the team. If they do something and it's not worked out or something's gone wrong, make it feel okay. They shouldn't feel worried. If they've communicated something to a client, and a lot of the time, if clients are annoyed for some reason, it comes down to communication. And in some ways, that's completely out of your control. You can do an amazing job, but the client may have other situations, other pressures, personal, business related, that are causing them to behave like that. Yeah. So it's really just a matter of getting the team to understand about more open, transparent communication. And it's okay when things go wrong. And I will give examples to team members if they've done something and the client's done something, and I'll say, well, when I worked at this company, I made this mistake, which is quite a bad mistake to make. I remember one specific mistake, and actually what I was quite surprised with at the company was my bosses were fine and they didn't come down on me. Now, I felt personal responsibility, but made me feel better that actually they understand that I'm mature enough to understand what I should have done or checked before I'd done that. Right. But that then allowed me to be more relaxed with the situation, obviously taking personal accountability.
Yeah. So it has to come from you. Just sit your people down and say, I want to hear this from you. And here's when I want to hear these things from you. And this is how I'd like to communicate.
Exactly. And what I love hearing when I'm chatting to some of the junior team members is actually some of the feedback I've heard is, compared to other graduates that might be working at other companies, they said what's quite strange and good here is that when we say something, you listen and things happen very quickly.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of those systems and structures for supporting the culture that you've set up from the beginning? First of all, how are they playing out while you're working remotely? And secondly, maybe how did you have to adjust some of those things?
So in terms of, the system, so I mentioned the employee engagement. And again, all our software that we use is in the cloud. Our core product is in the cloud as well. So from a day-to-day basis, everyone has laptops, so everyone's got internet. So in terms of actual day-to-day, we're in the very fortunate position, which I'm sure many businesses are not, that we can work wherever we are. So that works. Mm-hmm. Then in terms of culture-wise, we've got enough people that have been with us for more than a year, live the culture, the fast, flexible, flawless, etc. So in terms of how they behave and what they do going forward into the home life, that continues. The other thing as well is measurements and success, and we've generally been quite clear and transparent about what we look for. One thing we have to do more of now is be a bit more micromanaging, I would say, whereas before we were slightly less. Now, not in a bad way, but I think the key is when you set KPIs or goals and you're in the office together, and it's very easy to just measure and see what people are doing, and also give them the level of support that they need. As people start to work more independently, it's really important that you feel like there's a level of support there. And a level of support through the communications, the regular communications, through a higher frequency of video calls, Slack channel. So I'm a lot more involved on Slack on the random or general channels that we have. So we've got a few channels for just general nonsense, basically, to put it simply. And we've got certain channels for more sort of professional communication in terms of, sales updates, etc. So I'm now more involved in those because it allows me to connect more with the team. The team have more regular catch-ups directly. So it kind of maintains that cohesiveness on the communication. And at the same time, we're clear on our KPIs and we're directing a bit more on the KPIs as well. So they have more structure. And I think in the current situation, people need more structure and support, which, they don't necessarily need as much of when you have, the 9-to-5 office environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like more regular touch points with your team, a little bit more engagement on the informal channels.
again, one of the key things we found is when we were doing updates, typically the leadership team are doing the updates, we get in touch with individual team members beforehand to say, can you tell a bit on this, this, and this, so that during the call we can create more engagement. Because I think people, unless they're kind of at the senior level, are far more hesitant to ask questions or get involved if you've got 20 plus people on a call. They're not likely to say as much. Some people will, some people won't. So how can you create more engagement through just prepping people in advance to say something as well?
Did you have any conversations with your team around ways to effectively work while you're doing this remotely, or maybe some of the tips you want to share just from your own experience of, I know you worked at home for majority of the lockdown, now you've transferred to the office space. What's your view on that?
I think the key is, so first to come back to myself, because that's really how I'm approaching everything. So I think anyone listening as well, think about your own experience to this, and then that will then help you empathize with how your team are going through this. So I used to work from home from time to time, very few elements, and a lot of the time it was just stuff I needed complete headspace for a few hours. And because I live so close to the office, I would come back as well, so it wouldn't be like a full day. So for me, it was a completely new experience working from home permanently for like nearly 2 months or so. And a few things I found were, there's no structure anymore. So hence why coming to the office is quite nice, because you get up in the morning, you have your coffee on the way, you come into the office, and you're in work mode. In a smaller space, if you don't have a separate office, then everything is in the same place. You can get up, your television's here, your living room's here, your desk is over there. So it's very difficult to create that separation and start the day. So I think what was important was, firstly, make sure you create spaces for whatever that is, because you need to be able to close the office and then start your personal life at some point as well. So you're still working at home, which most people are, and I'm still working kind of flexibly between. Make sure you have a separation between personal and business, because not only would that bleed into your evening, it would also bleed into your weekend, and every day becomes a working day. That's the message I absolutely said to my team as well. Again, coming from my own experience, make sure you find ways to separate your work and your home life.
Even if it's like just a corner of your lounge. This is where I work out. This is where I watch TV and relax.
Just move things around.
This is where I work.
I was doing my workout from home as well. On the schedule front, as an office, we need to do sort of more 9 to 6 or 9 to 5. And we work with customers in the US as well. So some team are already late. And I said to my team, it's okay if you start your day later, or you need a break, or you need a nap, or you need something. And I think there's two elements to this. Firstly, people are switching from working in an office and having a routine to working from home and not having a set routine where they have to build the routine. Those that are very good at building routine, and I'm kind of in the middle, but there are some people that are very systematic in a routine. Business interruption, and again, for us, we've been quite lucky because we're really starting to see things improve very quickly, but many people won't. So, and particularly people who are on furlough or are in other businesses will be having this immense amount of stress now about, is their job safe? For me as a company, we've been communicating very clearly about the industry, the opportunity, why this actually is supporting the growth in the business, to give them comfort, because people are losing their job. So we know as a leadership team, we're comfortable where we are. I need to make sure I'm consistently communicating that to the team more, so they can see that there's confidence behind the business and that their job is secure. So we've not furloughed anyone. We're continuing business as well. And then at the time,
that's amazing. And it's like so important to over communicate right now than in the normal times.
Exactly. Again, every single time I'm giving an update. If I speak to industry analysts, I'm giving updates as to what they're saying, so that they get the level of clarity that I have. And even in a normal environment, it's always been difficult to find time to do that, but I'm doing it even more now, which is actually a very good thing to have. And again, another stress, which someone was telling me, which I only became aware of, I think my sister was talking about it, is I honestly didn't realize why at the end of the day I felt so exhausted from doing so many Zoom calls, because you'd think that it's maybe easier than just walking around. But what we do when we meet people in person. You've got normally more than one person. You're listening to multiple people. You can see the body language cues. You don't have any of that in Zoom. You're focusing on one person, and if I'm presenting, a lot of energy is going into this. I can't see the body language cues from people. So it's a very different type of communication, and it's quite exhausting as well. So, when I'm planning my Zoom meetings, I do always make sure I've got enough time in between them. I made the mistake early on of having a lot packed in, and it's not possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I deliver trainings now online, and I feel the same. Like, am I talking into the black hole, or is this landing? It actually takes an extra effort to just make sure that people are keeping up with you. And that kind of brings me to my, I guess, next question is, how do you look after your own well-being?
Very similar things, practice what I preach, right? I used to do a bit of meditation. I probably do less than I should, as most people do, but I understand the benefits of it. I just need to do a bit more.
What do you do, sorry? Is it meditation?
Meditation, yeah.
Meditation, yeah.
If I'm being honest, like, I used to probably do more pre-pandemic than I'm doing now. But in terms of overall well-being, so physical exercise, I continued my personal training on Zoom, and now we're doing in the park, which is good. So I'm getting 1 day a week in the park at a safe distance, exercising. So that's really important. Actually, one of our team members, shared one of the workouts that she got was like a challenge, which is quite an interesting thing to do as well. So that's another thing I've heard of another company do is, a sort of fitness challenge where some people can get involved and you do different parts of it. So it's another way to get your team involved and get them sort of physically fit or active. But again, you can't preach people to do that, but you can offer it as advice. And then in terms of the overall other well-being, all those stresses apply to me, but I need to be the rock for everyone, or the stable person in the middle that holds it all together when everything is all over the place. I can do that because I look after my sort of overall mental well-being through meditation piece, making sure I get enough exercise, making sure I'm not having too much negative input. I mean, the news or other information, there's obviously Netflix and there's different things like that. And then it's hobbies. So I took up learning the piano pre-pandemic in January, thankfully. And I bought a piano. So it's perfect because I'm now getting my piano lessons. And that for me is a focus, and it's a hobby, and it's separate. So finding bits of hobbies and passions that you can do. I love my photography. I wasn't able to do it outside. So, I started to do photography inside and product photography and worked, what can I learn and do inside the house versus outside the house, and just learn new skills.
Thank you so much for sharing all those amazing tips. I hope people are taking away from this in terms of what they could start implementing in their companies, but also how to manage their own stress levels. I'm excited to see what's next for you. You're a real inspiration to how you've managed to build out this business so far.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to see what you're doing as well. And congratulations. I think it's we've always had a very similar view in the world as well. And it's really great that you've got into coaching. And again, everyone needs a coach, right? I've got executive coach as well. You always need someone else there to also hold you accountable too. That's really important.
Absolutely. Thanks for the plug-in, Sandeep. So anyone's interested in executive coaching, team building, leadership coaching, Katrin at evolvequest.coach.
I've been with your workshops, are great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sandeep. And have a good weekend. And I hope we get to talk some more and share more of your wisdom.
Thank you very much, Katrin.
Thank you.
Bye.